rolling? Well, I guess we are. I guess we got breaking news. Events at the Republican National Convention. Oh, wait a minute. This happened 2 years ago. Oh, well. Anyway. 6. Oh, we're rolling? I've been doing this for, non-stop for a few days now. I'm getting a little punchy, Yep, puppets can get punchy. People don't know that. But it's true. Puppets get, stressed. But, okay. I'm ready. I'm good. 6. Events at the Republican National Convention. Maybe I'm not good. Maybe this is getting to me. I don't know. Something's funny. Something feels funny today. Trump campaign officials met with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak during the week of the Republican National Convention. The evidence indicates that those introductions were brief and non-substantive. During platform committee meetings immediately before the convention, J.D. Gordon, a senior campaign advisor on policy and national security, diluted a proposed amendment to the Republican Party platform expressing support for providing lethal assistance to Ukraine in response to Russian aggression. Gordon requested that the platform committee personnel revise the proposed amendment to state that only appropriate assistance be provided to Ukraine. The original sponsor of the lethal assistance amendment stated that Gordon told her, the sponsor, that he was on the phone with candidate Trump in connection with his request to dilute the language. Gordon denied making that statement to the sponsor, although he acknowledged it was possible. He mentioned having previously spoken to the candidate about the subject matter. The investigation did not establish that Gordon spoke to or was directed by the candidate to make that proposal. Gordon said that he sought the change because he believed the proposed language was inconsistent with the Trump's position on Ukraine. A. Ambassador Kislyak's encounters with Senator Sessions and J.T. Gordon the week of the RNC. In July 2016, Senator Sessions and Gordon spoke at the Global Partners in Diplomacy event, a conference co-sponsored by the State Department and the Heritage Foundation held in Cleveland, Ohio, the same week as the Republican National Convention, RNC or convention. Approximately 80 foreign ambassadors to the United States, including Kislyak, were invited to the conference. On July 20th, 2016, Gordon and Sessions delivered their speeches at the conference. In his speech, Gordon stated in pertinent part that the United States should have better relations with Russia. During Sessions' speech, he took questions from the audience, one of which may have been asked by Kislyak. When the speeches concluded, several ambassadors lined up to greet the speakers. Gordon shook hands with Kislyak and reiterated that he meant what he said in the speech about improving U.S.-Russian relations. Sessions spoke separately between 6 and 12 ambassadors, including Kislyak. Although Sessions stated during the interviews with the office that he had no specific recollection of what was discussed with Kislyak, he believed that the two spoke for only a few minutes and they would have exchanged pleasantries and said some things about U.S.-Russian relations. Later that evening, Gordon attended a reception as part of the conference. Gordon ran into Kislyak as the two prepared plates of food and they decided to sit at the same table to eat. They were joined at that table by ambassadors from Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan by Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. As they ate, Gordon and Kislyak talked for what Gordon estimated to be about 3 to 5 minutes, during which Gordon again mentioned that he meant what he said in his speech about improving U.S.-Russia relations. B. Change to Republican Party platform. In preparation for the 2016 convention, foreign policy advisors for the Trump campaign working with the Republican National Committee reviewed the 2012 convention's foreign policy platform to identify divergence between the earlier platform and the candidate Trump's positions. The campaign team discussed toning down the language from the 2012 platform that identified Russia as the country's number one threat, given the candidate's belief that there need to be better U.S. relations with Russia. The RNC Platform Committee sent the 2016 draft platform to the National Security and Defense Platform Subcommittee on July 10, 2016, the evening before its footnotes first meeting to propose amendments. Although only delegates could participate in formal discussions and vote on the platform, the Trump campaign could request changes, and members of the Trump campaign attended committee meetings. John Mashburn, the committee's policy director, helped oversee the campaign's involvement in the platform committee meetings. He told the office that he directed campaign staff at the convention, including J.D. Gordon, to take a hands-off approach and only to challenge platform plans if they directly contradicted Trump's wishes. On July 11, 2016, Delegate Diana Denman submitted a proposed platform amendment that included provision of armed support for Ukraine. The amendment described Russia's ongoing military aggression in Ukraine and announced support for maintaining and, if warranted, increasing sanctions against Russia until Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity are fully restored, and for providing lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine's armed forces and greater coordination with NATO on defense planning. Gordon reviewed the proposed platform changes, including Denman's. Gordon stated that he flagged this amendment because of Trump's stated position on Ukraine, which Gordon personally heard the candidate say at March 31st foreign policy meeting, namely that the Europeans should take primary responsibility for any assistance to Ukraine, and that there should be improved U.S.-Russia relations, and that he did not want to start World War III over that region. Gordon told the office that Trump's statements on the campaign trail following the March meeting underscored those positions to the point where Gordon felt obliged to report to the proposed platform change and seek its dilution. On July 11, 2016, at a meeting of the National Security and Defense Platform Subcommittee, Denman offered her amendment. Gordon and another campaign staffer, Matt Mueller, approached a committee co-chair and asked him to table the amendment to permit further discussion. Gordon's concern with the amendment was the language about providing lethal, I can see concern with lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine. Miller did not have any independent basis to believe that this language contradicted Trump's views and relied on Gordon's recollection of the candidate's views. According to Denman, she spoke with Gordon and Matt Miller, and they told her that they had to clear the language and that Gordon was talking to New York. Denman told others that she was asked by two Trump campaign staffers to strike lethal defense weapons from the proposal, but she refused. Denman recalled Gordon saying that he was on the phone with candidate Trump, but she was skeptical whether that was true. Gordon denied having told Denman that he was on the phone with Trump, although he acknowledged it was possible that he mentioned having previously spoken to the candidate about the subject matter. Gordon's phone records reveal a call to Sessions' office in Washington that afternoon, but did not include calls directly to a number associated with Trump. And, according to the president's written answers to the office's questions, he does not recall being involved in the change in language of the platform amendment. Gordon stated that he tried to reach Rick Dearborn, a senior foreign policy advisor, and Mashburn, the campaign policy director. Gordon stated that he connected with both of them. He could not recall if by phone or in person, and apprised them of the language he took issue with in the proposed amendment. Gordon recalled no objection by either Dearborn or Mashburn, and that all three campaign advisors supported the alternative formulation, appropriate assistance. Dearborn recalled Gordon warning them about the amendment but not weighing in because Gordon was more familiar with the campaign's foreign policy stance. Mashburn stated that Gordon reached him and he told Gordon that Trump had taken a stance on the issue and that the campaign should not intervene. When the amendment came up again in the committee proceedings, the subcommittee changed the amendment by striking the lethal defense weapons language and replacing it with appropriate assistance. So apparently lethal assistance is not appropriate. Gordon stated that he and the subcommittee co-chair ultimately agreed to replace the language about armed assistance with appropriate assistance. The subcommittee accordingly approved Denman's amendment, but with the term appropriate assistance. Gordon stated that to his recollection, this was the only change sought by the campaign. Sam Clovis, the campaign's national co-chair and chief policy advisor, stated he was surprised by the change and did not believe it was in line with Trump's stance. Mashburn stated when he saw the word appropriate assistance, he believed Gordon had violated Mashburn's directive not to intervene. Post-convention contacts with Kislyak. Ambassador Kislyak continued his efforts to interact with campaign officials with responsibility for the foreign policy portfolio, among them Sessions and Gordon, in the weeks after the convention. The office did not identify evidence in those interactions of coordination between the campaign and the Russian government. Ambassador Kislyak invites J.D. Gordon to breakfast at the ambassador's residence. On August 3, 2016, an official from the Embassy of the Russian Federation in the United States wrote to Gordon on behalf of Ambassador Kislyak, inviting Gordon to have breakfast tea with the ambassador at his residence in Washington, D.C. the following week. Gordon responded 5 days later to decline the invitation. He wrote, "These days are not optimal for us as we are busily knocking down a constant stream of false media stories while also preparing for the first debate with HRC. Hope to take a rain check for another time when things quiet down a bit. Please pass along my regards to the ambassador." The investigation did not identify evidence that Gordon made any other arrangements to meet or met with Kislyak after this email. Senator Sessions, September 2016, meeting with Ambassador Kislyak. Also in August 2016, a representative of the Russian embassy contacted Sessions' Senate office about setting up a meeting with Kislyak. At the time, Sessions was a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and would meet with foreign officials in that capacity. But Sessions' staff reported and Sessions himself acknowledged that meeting requests from ambassadors increased substantially in 2016 as Sessions assumed a prominent role in the Trump campaign and his name was mentioned for potential cabinet-level positions in a future Trump administration. On September 8, 2016, Sessions met with Kislyak in his Senate office. Sessions said that he believed he was doing the campaign a service by meeting with foreign ambassadors, including Kislyak. He was accompanied in the meeting by at least two of his Senate staff, Sandra Luff, his legislative director, and Pete Landrum, who handled military affairs. The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. Sessions voiced concern about Russia's sale of missile defense system to Iran, Russian planes buzzing U.S. military assets in the Middle East, and Russian aggression in emerging democracies such as Ukraine and Moldova. Kislyak offered explanations on these issues and complained about NATO land forces in former Soviet bloc countries that border Russia. Landrum recalled that Kislyak referred to the presidential campaign as an interesting campaign, and Sessions also recalled Kislyak saying that the Russian government was receptive to the overtures Trump had laid out during his campaign. None of the attendees, though, remembered any discussion of Russian election interference or any request that Sessions convey information from the Russian government to the Trump campaign. During the meeting, Kislyak invited Sessions to further discuss U.S.-Russia relations with him over a meal at the ambassador's residence. Sessions was non-committal when Kislyak extended the invitation. After the meeting ended, Luff advised Sessions against accepting the one-on-one meeting with Kislyak, whom she assessed to be old-school KGB guy. Neither Luff nor Landrum recalled that Sessions followed up on the invitation or made any further effort to dine or meet with Kislyak before the November 2016 election. Sessions and Landrum recalled that after the election, some efforts were made to arrange a meeting between Sessions and Kislyak. According to Sessions, the request came through CNI and would have involved a meeting between Sessions and Kislyak, two other ambassadors, and the governor of Alabama. Sessions, however, was in New York on the day of the anticipated meeting and was unable to attend. The investigation did not identify evidence that the two men met at any point after their September 8th meeting. And that is the Republican National Convention. You rolling? Huh? Alright. Get your jammies on, kiddies. This one's going to be a long one. It's the story of Paul Manafort. Yeah. We rolling? Oh, okay. Eight. Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort served on the Trump campaign, including a period as campaign chairman from March to August 2016. Manafort had connections to Russia through his prior work for Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska and later through his work... Tech. Bad tech. Back it up, boys. Back it up, boys. That's better, boys. Manafort had connections to Russia through his prior work for Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska and later through his work for a pro-Russian regime in Ukraine. Manafort stayed in touch with these contacts during the campaign period through Konstantin Kilimnik, a longtime Manafort employee who previously ran Manafort's office in Kiev and who the FBI assesses to have ties to Russian intelligence. Manafort instructed Rick Gates, his deputy on the campaign and longtime employee, to provide Kilimnik with updates on the Trump campaign, including internal polling data, although Manafort claims to not recall that specific instruction. Manafort expected Kilimnik to share that information with others in Ukraine and with Deripaska. Gates periodically sent his polling data to Kilimnik during the campaign. But that's not collusion? Manafort also twice met Kilimnik in the United States during the campaign period and conveyed campaign information. The second meeting took place on August 2, 2016 in New York City. Kilimnik requested the meeting to deliver in person a message from former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, who was then living in Russia. The message was about a peace plan for Ukraine that Manafort has since acknowledged was a backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. Several months later, after the presidential election, Kilimnik wrote on email to Manafort expressing the view, which Manafort later said he shared, that the plan's success would require U.S. support to succeed. All that is required to start the process is a very minor wink or slight push from Donald Trump. The email also stated that if Manafort were designated as the U.S. representative and started the process, Yanukovych would ensure his reception in Russia at the very top level. Manafort communicated with Kilimnik about peace plans for Ukraine on at least 4 occasions after their first discussion of the topic on August 2nd. December 2016, the Kilimnik email described above, January 2017, February 2017, and again in the spring of 2018. The office reviewed numerous Manafort email and text communications and asked President Trump about the plan and written questions. The investigation did not uncover evidence of Manafort's passing along information about the Ukrainian peace plan to the candidate or anyone else in the campaign or the administration. The office was not, however, able to gain access to all of Manafort's electronic communications. In some instances, messages were sent using encryption applications. And while Manafort denied that he spoke to members of the Trump campaign or the new administration about the peace plan, he lied to the office and the grand jury about the peace plan in his meetings with Kilimnik, and his unreliability on this subject was among the reasons that the district judge found he breached his cooperation agreement. The office could not reliably determine Manafort's purpose in sharing the internal polling data with Kilimnik during the campaign period. Manafort, grand jury, did not see a downside to sharing campaign information and told Gates that his role in the campaign would be good for business and potentially a way to be made whole for work he previously completed in the Ukraine. As for Deripaska, Manafort claimed that by sharing campaign information with him, Deripaska might see value in their relationship and resolve a disagreement, a reference to one or more outstanding lawsuits. Because of questions about Manafort's credibility and our limited ability to gather evidence on what happened to the polling data after it was sent to Kilimnik, the office could not assess what Kilimnik, or others he may have given it to, did with it. The office did not identify evidence of a connection between Manafort sharing polling data and Russia's interference in the election, which had already been reported by U.S. media outlets at the time of the August 2nd meeting. The investigation did not establish that Manafort otherwise coordinated with the Russian government on its election interference efforts. Paul Manafort's ties to Russia and Ukraine. Manafort's Russian contacts during the campaign and transition period stemmed from his consulting work for Deripaska from approximately 2005 to 2009 and his separate political consulting work in Ukraine from 2005 to 2015, including through his company DMP International LLC, DMI. Kilimnik worked for Manafort in Kiev during this entire period and continued to communicate with Manafort through at least June 2018. Kilimnik, who speaks and writes Ukrainian and Russian, facilitated many of Manafort's communications with Deripaska and Ukrainian oligarchs. Oleg Deripaska consulting work. In approximately 2005, Manafort began working for Deripaska, a Russian oligarch who has a global empire involving aluminum and power companies and is closely aligned with Vladimir Putin. A memorandum describing work that Manafort provided for Deripaska in 2005 regarding the post-Soviet republics referenced the need to brief the Kremlin and benefits of the work could confer on the Putin government. The Gates described the work Manafort did for Deripaska as political risk insurance and explained that Deripaska used Manafort to install politically friendly officials in countries where Deripaska had business interests. Manafort's company earned tens of millions of dollars from its work for Deripaska and was loaned millions of dollars by Deripaska as well. In 2005, Deripaska invested through another entity in Pericles Emerging Market Partners LP, Pericles Emerging Market Partners LP, Pericles, an investment fund created by Manafort and former Manafort business partner Richard Davis. The Pericles Fund was established to pursue investments in Eastern Europe. Deripaska was the sole investor. Gates stated in interviews with the office that the venture led to a deterioration of the relationship between Manafort and Deripaska. In particular, when the fund failed, litigation between Manafort and Deripaska ensued. Gates stated that by 2009, Manafort's business relationship with Deripaska had dried up. According to Gates, various interactions with Deripaska and his intermediaries over the last few years have involved trying to resolve the legal dispute. As described below, in 2016, Manafort, Gates, Kalimnik, and others engaged in efforts to revive the Deripaska relationship and resolve the litigation. 2. Political consulting work. Through Deripaska, Manafort was introduced to Renat Akhmetov, a Ukrainian oligarch who hired Manafort as a political consultant. In 2005, Akhmetov hired Manafort to engage in political work supporting the Party of Regions, a political party in Ukraine that was generally understood to align with Russia. Manafort assisted the Party of Regions in regaining power, and its candidate, Viktor Yanukovych, won the presidency in 2010. Manafort became a close and trusted political advisor to Yanukovych during his time as president of Ukraine. Yanukovych served in that role until 2014 when he fled to Russia amidst popular protests. What a guy. 3. Konstantin Kalimnik. Kalimnik is a Russian national who has lived in both Russia and Ukraine and was a longtime Manafort employee. Kalimnik had direct and close access to Yanukovych and his senior entourage, and he facilitated communication between Manafort and his clients, including Yanukovych and multiple Ukrainian oligarchs. Kalimnik also maintained a relationship with Deripaska's deputy Viktor Boyarkin, a Russian national who had previously served in the defense attaché office of the Russian embassy to the United States. Busy guys. Manafort told the office that he did not believe Kalimnik was working as a Russian spy. The FBI, however, assesses that Kalimnik has ties to Russian intelligence. Several pieces of the office's evidence, including witness interviews and emails obtained through court-authorized search warrants, support that assessment. Kalimnik was born April 27, 1970 in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, then of the Soviet Union, and attended the Military Institute of the Ministry of Defense from 1987 until 1992. Sam Patton, a business partner to Kalimnik, stated that Kalimnik told him he was a translator in the Russian army for 7 years and that he later worked in the Russian armament industry selling arms and military equipment. U.S. government visa records reveal that Kalimnik obtained a visa to travel to the United States with a Russian diplomatic passport in 1997. Kalimnik worked for the International Republican Institute IRI Moscow office, where he did translation work and general office management from 1998 to 2005. While another official recalled the incident differently, one former associate of Kalimnik's at IRI told the FBI that Kalimnik was fired from his post because his links to Russian intelligence were too strong. The same individual stated it was well known at IRI that Kalimnik had links to the Russian government. Jonathan Hawker, a British national who was a public relations consultant at FTI Consulting, worked with DMI on a public relations campaign for Yanukovych. After Hawker's work for the DMI ended, Kalimnik contacted Hawker about working for a Russian government entity on a public relations project that would promote in Western and Ukrainian media Russia's position on its 2014 invasion of Crimea. Gates suspected that Kalimnik was a spy, a view that he shared with Manafort, Hawker, and Alexander van der Zon, an attorney who had worked with DMI on a report for the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Spy. B. Contacts during Paul Manafort's time with the Trump campaign. Paul Manafort joins the campaign. Manafort served on the Trump campaign from late March to August 19, 2016. On March 29, 2016, the campaign announced that Manafort would serve as the campaign's convention manager. On May 19, 2016, Manafort was promoted to campaign chairman and chief strategist, and Gates, who had been assisting Manafort on the campaign, was appointed deputy campaign chairman. Thomas Barack and Roger Stone both recommended Manafort to candidate Trump. In early 2016, at Manafort's request, Barack suggested to Trump that Manafort join the campaign to manage the Republican convention. Stone had worked with Manafort from approximately 1980 until the mid-1990s through various consulting and lobbying firms. Manafort met Trump in 1982 when Trump hired the Black, Manafort, and Stone and Kelly lobbying firm. Over the years, Manafort saw Trump at political and social events in New York City and at Stone's wedding, and Trump requested VIP status at the 1988 and 1996 Republican conventions worked by Manafort. Wow. Manafort and Stone lobbying. Wow. According to Gates, in March 2016, Manafort traveled to Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida to meet with Trump. Trump hired him at that time. Manafort agreed to work on the campaign without pay. Manafort had no meaningful income at this point in time, but resuscitating his domestic political campaign career could be financially beneficial in the future. Gates reported that Manafort intended, if Trump won the presidency, to remain outside the administration and monetize his relationship with the administration. To Paul Manafort's campaign period contacts. Immediately upon joining the campaign, Manafort directed Gates to prepare for his review separate memoranda addressed to Deripaska, Akhmatov, Sergei Livakotin, and Boris Kolesnikov, the last three being Ukraine oligarchs who were senior opposition bloc officials. The memoranda described Manafort's appointment to the Trump campaign and indicated his willingness to consult on Ukrainian politics in the future. On March 30, 2016, Gates emailed the memoranda and a press release announcing Manafort's appointment to Kalimnik for translation and dissemination. Manafort later followed up with Kalimnik to ensure his messages had been delivered, emailing on April 11, 2016 to ask whether Kalimnik had shown our friends the media coverage of his new role. Kalimnik replied, "Absolutely, every article." Manafort further asked, "How do we use to get whole? Has Oleg Vladimirovich Deripaska operation seen?" Kalimnik wrote back the same day, "Yes, I have been sending everything to Victor, Boris Deripaska's deputy, who has been forwarding coverage directly to OVD." Gates reported that Manafort said that being hired on the campaign would be good for business and increase the likelihood that Manafort would be paid approximately $22 million that he was owed for previous political consulting work in the Ukraine. Gates also explained to the office that Manafort thought his role on the campaign could help confirm Deripaska had dropped the Pericles lawsuit, and that Gates believed Manafort sent polling data to Deripaska. Deripaska, the polling data. And discussed further below, so that Deripaska would not move forward with his lawsuit against Manafort. Gates further stated that Deripaska wanted a visa to the United States, that Deripaska could believe that having Manafort in a position inside the campaign or administration might be helpful to Deripaska, and that Manafort's relationship with Trump could help Deripaska in other ways as well. Gates stated, however, that Manafort never told him anything specific about what, if anything, Manafort might be offering Deripaska. Gates also reported that Manafort instructed him in April 2016 or early May 2016 to send Kalimnik campaign internal polling data and other updates so that Kalimnik in turn could share it with Ukrainian oligarchs. Gates understood that the information would also be shared with Deripaska. Grand jury. Gates reported to the office that he did not know why Manafort wanted him to send polling information, but Gates thought it was a way to showcase Manafort's work, and Manafort wanted to open doors to jobs after the Trump campaign ended. Gates said that Manafort's instructions included sending internal polling data prepared for the Trump campaign by pollster Tony Fabrizio. Fabrizio had worked with Manafort for years and was brought into the campaign by Manafort. Gates stated that in accordance with Manafort's instruction, he periodically sent Kalimnik polling data via WhatsApp. Gates then deleted the communications on a daily basis. Gates further told the office that after Manafort had left the campaign in mid-August, Gates sent Kalimnik polling data less frequently, and that the data he sent was more publicly available information and less internal data. Gates' account about the polling data is consistent, grand jury, with multiple emails that Kalimnik sent to U.S. associates and press contacts between late July and mid-August 2016. These emails referenced internal polling, described the status of the Trump campaign, and and Manafort's role in it, and assessed Trump's prospects for victory. Manafort did not acknowledge instructing Gates to send Kilimnik internal data. The office also obtained contemporaneous emails that shed light on the purpose of communications with Deripaska and are consistent with Gates' account. For example, in response to a July 7, 2016 email from a Ukrainian reporter about Manafort's failed Deripaska investment, Manafort asked Kilimnik whether there had been any movement on this issue with our friend. Gates stated that our friend likely referred to Deripaska, and Manafort told the office that the issue and our biggest interest, as stated below, was a solution to the Deripaska-Pericles issue. Kilimnik replied, I am carefully optimistic on the question of our biggest interest. Our friend, Boyarkin, said there is significantly more attention to the campaign in his boss Deripaska's mind, and he will be most likely looking for ways to reach out to you pretty soon, understanding all the time sensitivity. I am more than sure it will be resolved, and we will get back to the original relationship with V's boss Deripaska. 8 minutes later, Manafort replied that Kilimnik should tell Boyarkin's boss, a reference to Deripaska, that if he needs private briefings, we can accommodate. Manafort has alleged to the office he was willing to brief Deripaska only on public campaign matters and gave an example why Trump selected Mike Pence as the vice presidential running mate. Manafort said he never gave Deripaska a briefing. Manafort noted that if Trump won, Deripaska would want to use Manafort to advance whatever interest Deripaska had in the United States and elsewhere. Great guy. Oh. Paul Manafort, three. Paul Manafort's 2 campaign period meetings with Konstantin Kilimnik in the United States. Manafort met twice with Kilimnik in person during the campaign period, once in May and again in August 2016. The first meeting took place on May 7, 2016 in New York City. In the days leading up to the meeting, Kilimnik had been working to gather information about the political situation in Ukraine. That included information gleaned from a trip that former Party of Regions official Yuri Bayoko had recently taken to Moscow, a trip that included meetings between Boyko and high-ranking Russian officials. Kilimnik then traveled to Washington, D.C. on or about May 5, 2016. While in Washington, Kilimnik had prearranged meetings with State Department employees. Later, on the evening of May 6th, Gates arranged for Kilimnik to take a 3 a.m. train to meet Manafort in New York for breakfast on May 7th. According to Manafort, during the meeting, he and Kilimnik talked about events in the Ukraine, and Manafort briefed Kilimnik on the Trump campaign, expecting Kilimnik to pass the information back to individuals in Ukraine and elsewhere. Manafort stated that the opposition bloc members recognized Manafort's position on the campaign was an opportunity, but Kilimnik did not ask for anything. Kilimnik spoke about a plan of Boyko to boost election participation in the eastern zone of the Ukraine, which was the base for his opposition bloc. Kilimnik returned to Washington, D.C. right after the meeting with Manafort. Manafort met with Kilimnik a second time at the Grand Havana Club in New York City on the evening of August 2nd, 2016. The events leading up to this meeting are as follows. On July 28, 2016, Kilimnik flew from Kiev to Moscow. The next day, Kilimnik wrote to Manafort requesting that they meet using coded language about a conversation he had that day. In an email with the subject line, Black Caviar, Kilimnik wrote, I met today with the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar several years ago. We spent about 5 hours talking about his story, and I have several important messages from him to you. He asked me to go and brief you on our conversation. I said I have to run it by you first, but in principle I am prepared to do it. It has to do about the future of his country. It is quite interesting. Black caviar? Manafort identified the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar as Yanukovych. He explained that in 2010 he and Yanukovych had lunch to celebrate the recent presidential election. Yanukovych gave Manafort a large jar of black caviar that was worth approximately $30,000 to $40,000. Manafort's identification of Yanukovych as the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar is consistent with Kilimnik being in Moscow, where Yanukovych resided, when Kilimnik wrote, I met today with the guy, and with a December 2016 email in which Kilimnik referred to Yanukovych as BG. Manafort replied to Kilimnik's July 29th email, Tuesday, August 2nd is best, Tuesday or Wednesday in NYC. 3 days later, on July 31st, 2016, Kilimnik flew back to Kiev from Moscow, and on that same day wrote to Manafort that he needed about 2 hours for their meeting because it is a long caviar story to tell. Kilimnik wrote that he would arrive at JFK on August 2nd at 7:30 p.m., and he and Manafort agreed to a late dinner that night. Documentary evidence, including flight, phone, and hotel records and the timing of check messages exchanged, confirmed the dinner took place as planned on August 2nd. Caveat discussions. At the contents of the meeting itself, the accounts of Manafort and Gate, who arrived late to the dinner, differ in certain respects. Both their version of events, when assessed alongside available documentary evidence and what Kilimnik told business associate Sam Patton, indicate that at least 3 principal topics were discussed. First, Manafort and Kilimnik discussed a plan to resolve the ongoing political problems in Ukraine by creating an autonomous republic in its more industrialized eastern region of Donbass. And having Yanukovych, the Ukrainian president, ousted in 2014, elected to head that republic. That plan, Manafort later acknowledged, constituted a backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. Manafort initially said that if he had not cut off the discussion, Kilimnik would have asked Manafort in the August 2nd meeting to convince Trump to come out in favor of a peace plan, and Yanukovych would have expected Manafort to use his connections in Europe and Ukraine to support the plan. Manafort also initially told the office that he had said to Kilimnik that the plan was crazy. And the discussion ended, and he did not recall Kilimnik asking Manafort to reconsider the plan after their August 2nd meeting. Manafort said, grand jury, that he reacted negatively to Yanukovych sending, years later, an urgent request when Yanukovych needed him. When confronted with an email written by Kilimnik on or about December 8, 2016, however, Manafort acknowledged Kilimnik raised the peace plan again in that email. Manafort ultimately acknowledged Kilimnik also raised the peace plan in January and February 2017 meetings with Manafort, which are also grand jury. Second, Manafort briefed Kilimnik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election. That briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging and its internal polling data. According to Gates, it also included discussion of battleground states which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Manafort did not refer explicitly to battleground states in his telling of the August 2nd discussion. And we got some footnotes. Third, according to Gates and what Kilimnik told Patton, Manafort and Kilimnik discussed 2 sets of financial disputes related to Manafort's previous work in the region. Those consisted of the unresolved Deripaska lawsuit and the funds that the opposition bloc owed to Manafort for his political consulting work, and how Manafort might be able to obtain payment. After the meeting, Gates and Manafort both stated that they left separately from Kilimnik because they knew the media was tracking Manafort and wanted to avoid media reporting on his connections to Kilimnik. Nice. Post-resignation activities. Manafort resigned from the Trump campaign in mid-August 2016, approximately 2 weeks after his second meeting with Kilimnik, amidst negative media reporting about his political consulting work for the pro-Russian party of regions in Ukraine. Despite his resignation, Manafort continued to offer advice to various campaign officials through the November election. Manafort told Gates he still spoke with Kushner, Bannon, and candidate Trump, and some of those post-resignation contacts are documented in emails. For example, on October 1st, 2016, Manafort sent Kushner an email and attached a strategy memorandum proposing that the campaign make the case against Clinton as the failed and corrupt champion of the establishment, and that WikiLeaks provides the Trump campaign the ability to make the case in a very credible way by using the words of Clinton, its campaign officials, and DNC members. Later, in a November 5th, 2016 email to Kushner entitled Securing the Victory, Manafort stated that he was really feeling good about our prospects on Tuesday and focusing on preserving the victory, and that he was concerned the Clinton campaign would respond to a loss by moving immediately to discredit Trump victory and claim voter fraud and cyber fraud, including the claim that the Russians have hacked into voting machines and tampered with the results. When Trump was elected president on November 8, 2016, Manafort told the office that in the wake of Trump's victory, he was not interested in an administration job. Manafort instead preferred to stay on the outside and monetize his campaign position to generate business given to his familiarity and relationship with Trump and the incoming administration. Manafort appears to follow that plan as he traveled to the Middle East, Cuba, South Korea, Japan, and China, and was paid to explain what a Trump presidency would entail. Manafort's activities in early 2017 included meeting related to Ukraine and Russia. The first meeting, which took place in Madrid, Spain, in January 2017, was with Georgy Oganov. Oganov, who had previously worked at the Russian embassy in the United States, was a senior executive of the Deripaska company and was believed to report directly to Deripaska. Manafort initially denied attending the meeting. When he later acknowledged it, he claimed that the meeting had been arranged by his lawyers and only concerned the Pericles lawsuit. Other evidence, however, provides reason to doubt Manafort's statement that the sole topic of the meeting was the Pericles lawsuit. In particular, text messages to Manafort from a number associated with Kilimnik suggest that Kilimnik and Boyarkin, not Manafort's counsel, had arranged the meeting between Manafort and Oganov. Kilimnik's message states that the meeting was supposed to be not about money or Pericles, but instead about recreating the old friendship, ostensibly between Manafort and Deripaska, and talking about global politics. Manafort also replied by text that he needs this finished before January 20th, which appears to be a reference to be resolving Pericles before the inauguration. On January 5th, 2017, 3 days after his return from Madrid, Manafort emailed KT McFarland, who was at that time designated to be Deputy National Security Advisor and was formally appointed to that position on January 20th, 2017. Manafort's January 15 email to McFarland stated, "I have some important information I want to share that I picked up on my travels over the last month." Manafort told the office that the email referred to an issue regarding Cuba, not Russia or Ukraine, and that Manafort had traveled to Cuba in the past month. Either way, McFarland, who was advised by Flynn not to respond to Manafort inquiry, appears to not have responded to Manafort. Took some good advice there. Manafort told the office around the time of the presidential inauguration in January, he met with Kilimnik and Ukrainian oligarch Sergei Lvovsky at the Western Hotel in Alexandria, Virginia. During this meeting, Kilimnik again discussed the Yukonovich peace. We got some technical here. Everything's still working over there. Donald Trump ignores me and I don't know why. Everything the Trumpster hates rolled up into one guy. I'm sleepy and I'm nasty and I'm shady too, but not recused like Sessions. Was his name Magoo? Just like crooked Hillary or maybe lying Chuck. But no matter what I try, Don don't give a fuck. But I ain't no nervous Nancy or no sleazy Adam Schiff. Someone tell me how to get this ass to give a shit. I'm all for higher taxes and I'm all for higher crime. Think cheating Obama did the job just mighty fine. I like crazy Bernie, I like Pocahontas too. Just like Dickie Durbin, I ain't your mama's fool. Donald Trump ignores me and I don't know why. I'm everything the Trumpster hates rolled up into one guy. Lying, leaking, heartless, slimeball, slippery, sanctimonious, here for all to see.